Hello, I'm Sam Harrison and I review and discuss fantasy and science fiction books. Today we have a review for a fantasy novel, The Justice of Kings by Richard Swan. In today's video I'm going to tell you a little bit about the book, the plot, the characters, and then at the end we'll give a summary of how I personally felt about it and what my kind of star rating and overall impressions were. This is a completely non-spoiler review. I decided not to include a spoiler section for this one because I feel like the actual plot in terms of what happens was never very much kind of the real like surprise sort of storyline. So I feel like I can fully discuss this book without going into spoilers and have a pretty satisfactory video. So let's start off with the plot of the book. So Conrad von Volt is a justice. He works directly for the emperor in a society which is called the Empire of the Wolf, which is also the name of the trilogy of books that Justice of Kings is the first book in. Now, von Volt as a justice is basically Sherlock Holmes mixed with Judge Dredd. He's the detective, he's the judge, he's the jury, and he's the executioner. And basically he and his assistants go around the fringes of the empire to places without their own kind of developed legal system of courts and that sort of thing. And they investigate crimes, they try and sentence and, in many cases, execute. So he's a really interesting character. Von Volt has been a justice for a while. He is an ex-soldier from the Reichskrieg, I think, which is the German word for like country war or like realm war. The Empire of the Wolf essentially is is kind of expanded from a small country out into all of the surrounding countries. So even Von Volt and none of the major characters are actually native to Sova, which is the kind of the lead country, the originating country of the empire. However, in many cases, their countries have been overtaken for many, many, many years. So Von Volt as a justice has multiple powers. So he can compel people to do as he says. He can compel people to tell the truth, and he can also speak to the dead as long as the body is recently dead or did not have like a head injury or something like that. So it's really interesting because while he seems like these abilities would make being a detective extremely easy, they're actually really limited in really interesting ways. So similar to kind of like a Jedi mind trick, he can't make people tell the truth if they're expecting it or if they're in a defensive mode. So he still has to rely on the traditional kind of detective's craft, as you were. Now, Von Volt is, as I said, a really interesting and complex character, and I think that he's on the cover, but the interesting thing about Von Volt is that he is not our point of view in this world. He isn't the protagonist. The protagonist and the first-person point of view through which the entire story is told is Helena Sadanka. Now, Helena is his archivist. She's basically the Watson to his Sherlock Holmes. And she is his she's his archivist and his clerk. She basically writes down notes. She keeps a ledger of all the crimes that he adjudicates, and then these ledgers are sent to the capital where they are examined, and the kind of the order of justices decides whether he has done the right thing basically in sentencing. He's not like overruled or anything like that, but there's like a central body that kind of watches over these justices and makes sure that they're all doing the right thing in the best interests of the empire and in what's called the common law. And we also have a third major character of his name is Dubin Bressinger, and he's an old soldier. He's referred to by Von Volt as his task man, but he's kind of like a mix between like bodyguard, enforcer, investigator, and kind of like assistant, I guess. He and Von Volt are both, as I said, veterans of this Rice Krieg, from many years ago, and as an old soldier, he's very skilled in sword fighting. So there's several sword fights in. There's quite a few moments where sword fighting is required in the book. Maybe not so much sword fights, because Bressinger is extremely capable, and is multiple times is referred to as being like a very, very, very good swordsman. And he, interestingly, he's also from another country. So he's Grozodan, which is a land where they have kind of like slightly darker skin. He has a big, thick mustache, and he fights with a very flamboyant sword fighting style. So, really interesting character again. And you learn some stuff about Bressinger as you go through the book, which really reframes the character, I think. But he's kind of funny and also quite a tragic figure. Interesting character, and again, it's something that I'm looking forward to seeing kind of where this world develops and the characters that we see. Now, what Von Volt is doing is basically in this book is he's traveling from town to town, and you see him. The intro for the book is basically his like first pit stop. So he stops off at this town called Rhyl, and not Rhyl in Wales. He stops off at this town called Rhyl, and he finds some people practicing the traditional religion of their country, which has been outlawed by the emperor, who says that people can only practice his religion, which is the worship of this goddess called Nema. Is very similar to how in the Roman Empire they would subsume local religions and kind of translate them into their own. The same thing has happened in this religion of Nema, that the emperor and the empire all worship. Traveling with them is a Neman priest called Claver, and he's he's very specifically described as being like annoying and like self-righteous and all these sorts of things. And he's a really interesting character as well. And you don't see too much of him as he kind of disappears after that first section of the novel. But there's a lot of foreshadowing. And you can tell that Claver is going to be very important as the story continues onwards. And he does indeed become so. Let's talk. So actually, I'll give you the plot setup again. So I say again, I'll finish the plot setup. So you move on from Rhyl after Von Volt dispenses his judgment there, and on to a town called Galen's Vale. I think the Vale of Get. I'm terrible at remembering these sorts of things. We move on to a place that is basically called the Vale, and in the Vale, a lord's wife has been murdered. And this is a very uncommon crime. So common people kill each other all the time, but the nobility very, very rarely kill each other, and all are killed. And Von Volt is brought in to investigate this. He's travelling to the town, but the town sends people out to bring him quicker to investigate this murder, because it's causing a lot of kind of stir and hubbub in the town. Now, the crime is really interesting, and one of the things that I really liked about this book is the kind of smaller scale. So while there are some kind of more bigger scale events in the kind of final third of the book, final 20%, the majority of the book is kind of this very small scale murder investigation, and you never really leave. You spend almost all of the book in the town. So it's a really interesting small scale story. It feels almost like a BBC historical drama, and absolutely could be one without the kind of magic stuff, which is very sparingly, pardon me, which is very, very sparingly used. Just let the other cat in. Come on in, quickly. So as I was saying, the magic system is very, very sparingly used, and I think because the entire book is from the point of view of Helena, and she doesn't explicitly understand it, so she knows a lot about it, because she's been traveling with Von Volt for so long. So she knows, for example, like how the Emperor's voice works. She knows, how tired it makes him. She knows the effects it has on people. And in fact, one of the things that doesn't really become clear for a little while, but eventually is very clear, is that the Emperor's voice is also quite taxing on the person who it's used on. So you see a couple of times where Von Volt will use the voice repeatedly, and the person will like pass out or start to bleed from their eyeballs or nostrils and stuff. Speaking of bleeding from the eyeballs and nostrils, is this book? I wouldn't say that this book is a grimdark book. It isn't kind of one of those there is no hope, this is a horrible society and a horrible world. But it is not it's not exactly uplifting. The thing I would probably say is it feels quite real and raw, and it feels like it feels very true to how a society like that would probably be. One of the really interesting things about the book, as I said, is the small scale. But you also really get to know the town that you spend all this time in. So you get to know the town, you get to know the people, and even the minor characters have like are really well fleshed out. So people like the mayor, who is only in a small number of scenes, but through Helena's kind of observations and narration, Richard Swan is able to really, really delve into these characters. The one thing that I haven't mentioned as well is the kind of narrative framing for this book. So this book is being written by Helena as an old woman. So she specifically is saying throughout multiple points of the book, she heavily foreshadows that this is kind of the inciting incident upon which some very, very big historically significant moments are going to take place. The foreshadowing is really, really good. There's foreshadowing for events in the book, so you kind of have and then we met this person who came to a very unhappy end, things like that. So there's some really interesting foreshadowing for story elements within the book itself, like I was talking about with Claver, where she goes, "Oh, we were glad to see the back of him, and I wish we had never seen him again." And then there's also foreshadowing for the future books in the series. So this series is planned to be a trilogy. The second book came out last year. The third book is out in February. So my plan for reading this series was that I would try Justice of Kings out this month, and if I loved it, I would plan to read the next two. And while we've kind of talked around we've talked around the book now, I guess I can tell you guys that I really loved it. I think the book is excellent. I actually ended up giving it a 5-star review on Goodreads. Now, or you can just see a tiny bit of cat. You've just missed Barry. I gave this a 5 stars on Goodreads. It's interesting because I've given a lot of 4-star reviews this year. I've given a lot of 4-star reviews in general because I like to like things. I tend to rate things with between 3 and 5 stars. If it's below 3 stars, I'm unlikely to finish the book. And I don't feel like I want to review books I haven't finished. Anyway, so this one, didn't have the big goosebumps causing, you know, like spine tingling finale, which often is what will kind of push me over the edge into that 5 star. So often, I mean, I've talked about this previously, that many books that I have read this year that I've given 4 stars have been super excellent, but felt like they were missing that final bit, that bit that gives you that kind of like, oh my god, it's happening, like the spine tingling feeling. And I didn't really get that from Justice of Kings, but I've still given it a 5 star. And I think that the reason that I didn't get the goosebumps, didn't get what I would say maybe you could call the 5 star feeling, however, I still gave it 5 stars, was because I think of the much more intimate setting. So because the world of the story is so much smaller. I mean, even I just read Dragons of Deepwood Fen, right? And that series, I would say, is on a smaller scale than many epic fantasy novels, but it still takes place across like 3 different cities, and they're not like small towns; they're cities. Um, Whereas Justice of Kings takes place across like basically one large town and a little bit of countryside between it and a couple of other small places that you visit for a few pages. Um, so it's really focused, really concentrated. Getting to spend all this extra time with the characters and having this focus on this small cast made the book a lot more immersive. And I felt like when that book ended, I knew Helena really intimately well. I knew Bressinger, I knew Von Volt, and I know I said I wouldn't go into spoilers, and this is not a spoiler, but where we leave those characters at the end of Justice of Kings is a really fantastic transition from one book to the next, I think. The epilogue in the book is really good. I really liked it. So, yes, overall, I really like this book, and I would recommend it to pretty much anyone, really. If you have read things like Game of Thrones, or you've read something, or in fact, you're a fan of, for example, those kind of 3 part BBC dramas, something like, in fact, Luther is probably a good comparison. So Luther and Von Volt would probably get on very well. Um, or maybe not, actually. But if you kind of put together what you get from Von Volt, well, not Von Volt, if you put together what you get from one of those 3 part BBC dramas where it's like, 3 hour and a half long episodes, that follow like a specific crime or something like that. This is very similar, and I think if somebody was out there going like, oh, we should adapt this or whatever, I would say that's the way to go. Make it a mini series. That it would be so popular. Um, I love this book. Can't wait for the next one. And I again highly recommend it. I don't know if this will make it into my top 10 of the year because I'm about to look through all of my books and start thinking about that. But it's one that I really loved and I recommended it. I've been recommending it to a lot of friends who aren't big readers as well because it's quite a short book. And it's even if you are a Spotify user, and you've got the audiobooks thing where you get like 15 hours of audiobook, it's under 15 hours. So if you aren't even a big reader, you could definitely listen to this on Spotify within a month and not have to pay anything on top of your monthly membership. And the audiobook is really good. The narrator's excellent. So I actually picked up the audiobook and the ebook for this one because I wanted to switch between the two. And yeah, really great. Lots of tension, a really interesting mystery, a fun conspiracy, and I think a really smashing ending. So if you're looking for something great to read over the Christmas break, this is probably a really good recommendation. Anyway, if you like this video, why don't you give it a like? If you have read Justice of Kings, or this video has made you interested to read Justice of Kings, then please leave a comment down below. Tell me what you thought of the book. Tell me, if you're going to be adding it straight away to your TBR, or if you're, watching this video in like 7 months' time, and you've just finished reading the book and you want to see what people are saying about it. You're absolutely welcome to leave a comment, and I'll have a chat with you in the comments, and we can talk about how much we love this book. If you've read the whole series and you're coming back to this one just to see what people are thinking, then please do still leave comments. I'd love to talk to you. Obviously, though, no future spoilers for people who may be watching this review to see whether they want to read Justice of Kings. And also, if you'd like to see my review for Tyranny of Faith, which is the next book in the series, then you should subscribe to the channel, because it will be with you in January, because that's when I'm planning on reading it. For anything else, please drop a comment, or I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.